Hello and welcome to the SC Playbook podcast, the second episode of the NRL Supercoach pre-season for 2025. Proudly brought to you by Mortgage Choice SCW. I'm your host, Tim Williams. We've been given an early gift from those over at Supercoach headquarters. Supercoach has launched roughly a week earlier this year, and I'm up and about as a result of it. Normally launches around Australia Day, but a bit earlier. We've got access here to talk through it with me for the first time in 2025. It's 2019 NRL Supercoach champion Dezzy Creek. Des, how are you, mate?
I'm good. Just back from a stint in Bali, actually, where I was doing a bit of off-season, scoping about. And no, I didn't come across anything much. I know you were hoping for a story there, but no, I didn't run into any footy players. I went to all the spots around Canggu, the main Finns Beach Club, those sort of places, but no, just didn't see any boys up to any mischief.
Disappointing, mate. Was there time for a bit of Supercoach reflection? You're coming off yet another good year, surprise in Supercoach. But was there time to have a think about what went right, what went wrong, or was it all just $1? Is it bintangs, or have we got the wrong country?
$1? No, definitely not these days.
It bumped up.
It's, about $3-4 for a bintang now. Not great, but
it's a rort.
Yeah.
You'll have to win again, mate, so you can afford it.
Yeah. Well, you're always a fair chance, Dezzy, despite me disagreeing with just about everything you do and all your logic, and manages to work every year. Also with us today, for the first time on the NRL Supercoach podcast this year, a popular fixture on the Supercoach Big Bash content throughout the summer, Maxi Bryden. Maxi, welcome back.
Timothy, thank you, mate. Well, let's just start. That's saying that you went to Finns Beach Club and didn't see a single NRL player has to be the biggest fib ever told in this podcast. I think they're almost an official sponsor of the NRL by this date. But, man, good to be here. I said to myself I'd give myself like a week off after BBL because it's a big season. It's an exhausting season with the late nights. But I think a day was enough. Waking up on a Tuesday morning after the Monday, to say I'm feeling refreshed would be my life for today. But, man, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, that's right, mate. Especially after your season rank in the Big Bash, it's fine. Like, you need to get straight back into it. Much like my season rank with the NRL last year when cricket couldn't come quick enough, dead set. Max, you learned something about you in the last 20-odd minutes. You were a gun rower back in the day, potentially Olympics bound, but you're too heavy for the boat.
Not rower. Sailor.
Yeah, that's
Sailor.
right.
Sailor, sorry.
Big difference.
Sailor.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Back in the day, you used to catch me hanging out on a trapeze wire, going around the waters of either the Georges River on Botany Bay or sometimes out at the heads near Manly. So, yeah.
Bloody hell.
Yeah,
Must be very nice, that one, mate.
It's not too bad. It's a good way to spend your summertime. In fact, actually, my sailing mates actually who got me into Supercoach in the first place. So shout out to the boys. I'm sure they will be tuning in.
The sailing boys, how good. Also with us today, as always, Matty the Waterboy. Matty, how are you, mate?
I'm good. Unlike the boys, this is how many shows we've done this year? Like 10 or 11? We're well into the year now.
Seriously, he doesn't stop.
Yeah, I know, right? But
I know last week, Matty, you were saying off air about coming off such a great cricket summer, and we got absolutely roasted in the comments about talking slightly too much cricket last week as well, so noted. But it was a great summer, and you were talking about how a bit of a slower getting back into the footy this year. That was a week ago. How are you feeling?
Funnily enough, I was talking to Maxi about this literally half an hour ago. Normally by January, I'm just so excited for rugby league, and I am. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited for rugby league, but because of how good the cricket is, the Big Bash finals are starting tonight. The test matches on next week. Plus, we've got Champions Trophy at a semi-convenient time. When I say semi-convenient, I mean we can watch a few hours before bed.
Yeah.
Like, there's still plenty to go before rugby league season. So, I don't know. Cricket's flying at the moment. So, rugby league can take a backseat till March. I hesitated then because that's a lie. We're gonna as soon as the trials start in like 2 weeks, I'll be there with my Rabbitohs jersey on for sure.
There's some Harold Match trials on the weekend. Matty will be down there for that with Guru. Before we talk any more cricket and listeners, whatever you want to call yourself at the moment, where you're tuning in from, tune out. We'll get back to the footy. Guys, before we start today's show, yesterday would have been my late father, Mark Willie's 70th birthday. So one of the most beautiful, wonderful human beings you'd ever meet in your entire life. So, boys, we're going to throw this one out to Mark Williams for this show. So, cheers, Willie, and we'll get stuck into it for the second show of the SC Playbook pre-season. On today's show, we're going to be looking at the topic for the show, the short-term versus the long-term strategy. We do this every pre-season, and it's not only good for new super coaches to the game or early on in their days to learn a little bit about the different approaches to it. but also for experienced super coaches, because I know my opinions change on it slightly each and every year. I love doing it with you, Dezzy, because you and I have such different approaches to the game and how we set up our teams for round one and how we attack it throughout the year. Maxie, you did a big diet. Your plan last season was to just get as much cash and build as much value as you could. We'll talk about that case study and how that turned out for you, the pros and cons. And our team previews also start today. The Panthers, the Sharks, the Broncos, and the Dragons. Guys, the SC Playbook Unlimited League is also live now. The game has launched. The code to join that, 434727. Get involved into that. Take us on. If you can knock off the SC Playbook contributors, there's $1,000 up for grabs for the top-ranked subscriber to knock us off. If a non-subscriber wins the group, it'll be $500 to the winner and $500 to the top-ranked subscriber. And guys, the SC Playbook subscription package is also live for 2025, and it's a bit different this season. We've changed it for the first time to monthly, so it's $8 per month, less than $2 a week, less than half a cup of your daily coffee. We've had plenty of feedback in the past, and particularly over the last 12 months, just about making them a little bit more flexible for subscribers. So that's what we've done. If you get sick of listening to the Spy dribble on about this fullback rotation policy that never works for him, and you go, this bloke isn't worth my $1.95 a week or whatever it works out to be, you can drop out if you need to. We don't want you to, but you can. So yeah, rather than just paying that lump start at the start of the season, it'll just roll out monthly, $2 a week, $8 a month. We're also expanding our subscription value in 2025. You'll get all the regular gear with access to our premium articles on site each and every round of the preseason and every round of the season. Access to our subscriber-only WhatsApp group. We have late mail for every game and team news throughout the week. A contributor chat where the subscribers can see all our round one teams from the contributors, weekly trades, skippers, debates, all that good stuff. And the SC Playbook community have their own group to bounce ideas and feedback off each other, and there's also plenty of more threads in there. Of course, access to our $1,000 major prize and a few new features in 2025. A subscriber-only podcast is coming to SC Playbook, both video and audio, access to that one. Most of the time me, but we'll get some different contributors doing that as well. It's going to be around topics missed in the main podcast of the week. So focusing on super pods and things like that, things a little bit left field each and every week of the season. Also in 2025, for the punters out there, access to our punting plays each round in article format on the website, not just from the Halfback podcast if you're listening to that one. There's extra plays in that for the tips leading into the weekend, and more to come as the preseason unfolds. If you want to get on board and support the site, head to scplaybook.com.au, find the subscribe tab in the menu on site. The new WhatsApp link, that'll be in the confirmation email. If you don't see the email, check your junk folder because it will be in there. Boys, enough out of me. Let's get stuck into the good stuff. Short-term versus long-term planning. Now, to try and sort of define this the way that I see it, boys, and make it clear for the listeners out there, short-term planning I see as being less conscious of getting every cheapie early in the season and the ones with the low break-evens and making cash and increasing your squad value. You're focusing on maximising points rather than that cash generation and squad value. So you might even start with a couple of nuffs for looping purposes or to maximise your squad at the time, your starting team, going a bit harder on trades early, getting ahead and saying, basically, catch me if you can and hope that things go your way in the back end of the season. Long term, this is what Maxie did big time last season and the way that I tend to roll. Maximise your cash generation early. Build up that squad value. You can afford better players, longer term. You try and save a few early trades, save them for the back end of the season when injuries hit and restings and that sort of stuff. Avoiding naffs, building a deeper squad. That's how I go. Dezzy, you tend to be a bit more fast and loose with it, going hard early. I'm going to start with you though, Maxie, because going into last season, you just said, I'm going to have the biggest squad value of anyone out there, and I'm going to see how that plays out for me. Firstly, what was your rank, and how did you find the process?
Yeah, so my final rank at the end of last season was just outside the 5K. I think I got it up to about 2.5K at one point, but just had a shocking end of the season. I think we probably all remember last year in that second post-origin period, it was really hard to move rank. I think you were stuck around the 300s for week after week. And while I climbed and sort of shuffled, I sort of got stuck there. But man, I found it a really interesting approach, and it was something that was coming off the back of a really good BBL season last year. We won't talk about this year's BBL season, whereby having a good team value just meant so many more positives to my squad. And it's interesting, right, because it wasn't just so much like a focus on chasing all of those negative break-evens, as you said, and you have to obviously be quite discerning about not just picking a guy who's looking good in 1 week and then going to get an awful role. Like, the examples last year were Zach Labart, massive negative break-even heading into round 2, but awful base. Or like a Joey Lussick who, had a really massive negative break-even. A lot of people wanted to get there, but he had an awful role. And, I avoided those guys. You've got to be discerning. But for the most part, it was about doing some short-term trades that may cause a little bit of pain, but I knew were going to give me a really, really a cash injection to my overall squad, which was going to get me squad depth, but also get me there quicker than most. And why I wanted squad depth was particularly over the origin period. I know you're a big buy planner, Timmy. I know, Des, you're not a big buy planner.
Nope.
Having squad depth really sort of placed me in the middle and meant that I didn't have to spend unnecessary trades in order to get those extra 30 or 40 points each week, because I knew that the guys I had were quality. And if there was going to be restings, I could field a really, really strong 17 most weeks. So to give you an example of like a trade that I did last year, which I normally wouldn't do, heading into round 3 last year, Ronaldo Molitalo had gone bang bang in the first 2 rounds, had I think like a negative 30 odd break even. Looked set to make cash, and Cronulla were looking pretty good up until they ran into my Tigers that week at Leichhardt Oval. Hello. But then Kalen Ponga conversely had started like an absolute busted and was, I think his break even was about 130 or 140 or something like that. And most people were just saying, wait it out, it's KP, he'll come good, or Ronaldo, you're chasing. Well, I made those trades between those 2 blokes, held them for 2 weeks, and netted 170 grand in that process for 2 trades, which was just one little thing that got the wheels rolling towards building up a really, really good squad momentum. Chasing cheapies is something that I'll take a protest to, in the sense that I wasn't doing it. And some people go, mate, you're just chasing break-evens. But for me, it was also just about really identifying value and finding guys who I thought could be keepers at the lowest price possible. And there were a lot of them last year who sort of came out of the woods and became really playable guys. So to give you an example, Zach Lomax came out in that first week, went nuts. I think he's based about 50 or 60, had the goal kicking, scored 70, and everyone went, okay, let's take a look at him and see if he's got season holder potential. I said, no, I've seen enough. 630k, got him, held him for most of the year, and most people, if they had to buy him, would have paid over 700k. Karaz, I think round 6 he moved to the wing from centre. He was pretty popular at pre-season. The centre hadn't really done much. When he went to the wing, his first game at base was about 49. I think I text you the week that I noticed that was 5 minutes before his lockout. Everyone was looking at Jermaine Azarko and Ruben Garrick, and I said, Karaz has just moved to the wing. Is there something here? And you went, mate, this is too late for me to think about this. But I jumped on.
Give me some notice.
Yeah, that's it. But I jumped on it. Must have been low 600s and got a season keeper who most people had to pay over 700. So it was as much about prioritising value as it was about prioritising
it's quality.
Cash.
As you said, it's not just he's got a negative 80 break even because he scored 2 hat-tricks in a row, but they were all asked, whatever, and they won't continue. There was a quality aspect to it. It's not purely cash, but it was maximising cash value with players that, maybe they do become keepers or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And you finished in an annoying position, Maxie, in terms of this as a case study. And as we know in Supercoach, there are far more than one way to skin a cat. You can go long term, you can go short term, and you can finish. One bloke might finish first, one bloke might finish second overall. But in 5,000, it's like, all right, it wasn't a great year, but it wasn't a bad year. So you're sort of like, all right, where does this leave your strategy of maximum cash value? I suppose, what did you learn from it in terms of, are you going the exact same approach this year?
Yeah, absolutely I am. And I'll tell you what it did for me, which is a position that I haven't really been in before. Firstly, my starting team last year was awful. And one of the reasons why I lent in so heavily into this was I needed to correct. I had an awful front row, I had an awful second row, I had awful halves, and I really needed to sort them out. But but I think, and if I have a look at the numbers as well, I think by round 11 last year, my team value ticked over $15 million, and it didn't dip below that all season, which was, by that point in the season, it would have been one of the biggest in the competition.
Yeah, so if we're referring to rank, it's like, well, the method behind it was, in your mind, potentially sound. You've still got to pick the right blokes.
Yeah, absolutely. You do have to pick the right blokes. But what this allowed me to do was be ultra aggressive in taking punts on my team. Whereas most people, they're still like, we know in Supercoach, a lot of people, you'll move with the crowd, right? Everyone knows KP will show a bunch of form and everyone's got to jump there. Or we'll find a CTW who we've forgotten about at the Roosters who's got a low break even and everyone in the crowd moves there. I was able to zag when other people could zig because I was confident in the depth of my squad and I had really good players. But the only reason I finished only in 5,000s last year was because the gambles that I took just backfired spectacularly. So I was in a position, I think in round 15 or might have been the round 16 second bye, where I had the opportunity to go Ryan Pappenhausen. He was at super low ownership, just coming back from injury, and shown absolute star potential at that time. He just sucked when he came back. He was hurt. I think he scored 5 times underneath 40, lost me 150 grand. But I had a potential super pod who could have sent me the absolute other way up the rankings. Yeah. I just pulled the wrong rein. And another opportunity that I got to take a pod move at the moment was halfway through the season, I think a lot of people, particularly those at the top of the ladder, had identified Connor Watson as being probably the best hooker in the game. And I was able to go and make a move towards him because I had good halves and I had good fullbacks and things like that. Again, he then got injured and he had to play like 3 games at centre and stuff like that, covering HIAs and all that kind of thing. But that was a move to create a pod and an opportunity that could have sent me that way. It just so happened to not work out. I was also in an opportunity where I was able to change Jerome Hughes to Sam Walker at the end of the season, missed those 200+ scores from Jerome, and then Sam Walker got injured. So I was able to do super aggressive stuff, not just for the sake of being different. It was just because my team was so good that I could cover it if it went wrong. So
just pulled the wrong line a few times in the back end of the season.
Yeah, that's it. But again, if those trades go right, then I'm probably sitting here going, I've found a different route to the top 1K. So. And
the other thing on that, Maxi, is I've always been a long-term Supercoach player and it's worked for me every year, barring last. And a big part of that is, I've got a deep squad for the back end of the year. When there are injuries, players resting and all that sort of stuff, what really did hurt me was that, and I probably overcompensated a little bit too much to it, but getting that final round, I think every team up until about the top 10 or 11 in those last 2 to 3 weeks when you normally get the restings, barring like maybe the Storm or whatever, were all had something to play for, whether it was a home final, the top 4 spot, a top 8 spot, whatever it might be. So no one was really in a position to rest, which backfired. I'm relatively set in my ways, Dezzy, in terms of that long game. I build a deep squad. I want 25 players active because I know there's going to be injuries, shock origin collapse we didn't plan for, all sorts of different things, suspension. So I want to have options to bring them in, and I want my whole squad generating cash. You are more fast and loose, but you're not set in your ways. I've seen you more often than not in the past not look at ownerships and go hard early on trades and do all that sort of stuff. But I know last year you were a bit more conservative on trades. You saved them half all right, and I've seen you approach the game in different ways in different years, and you're generally around that top 1,000 mark more often than not. How do you approach it?
Well, yeah, last season I kind of I've been won over by the trading early doors. Use all your boosts as soon as you can. Get as much cash as you can. I mean, listening to Maxi speak, it was like an analogy just came to me. He was like building a pizza. He was trying to cook the perfect supreme pizza. He had all the ingredients. He could afford them all. He was chucking the olives on. Yeah. He was chucking, but he just didn't cook it at the right time. Whereas I'd try and just make it a plain, simple margarita or a pepperoni, and just cook it at the right time. It's that simple. But yeah,
he wanted to get the prosciutto on top of the bacon and the chicken and the
just wasn't
feta cheese.
He wasn't a good chef.
And he ended up going, and he could afford it, unlike anyone else, but he went the sardines instead.
yeah, that's it. And I won't hear a bad thing about sardines either, man. They're delicious each.
But yeah, that's Supercoach for you. It's like building the perfect pizza. So, in terms of cheapies, there's just no avoiding it. You have to buy them every season. You need probably 10, I'd say, 10 to 15 mid-range to cheapie players. You're always going to get the same ones as other people. There's always ones that are super highly owned. So you just have to do it. There's no two ways around that. In terms of nuffs, I always like to have one just so that you can have the vice captain loophole off the rip. I think it's a good idea to have one. Normally like a dual position player, you'll have a front row, second row. I think that's the way to go. But yeah, I've always kept in mind points over cash, but cash just comes. It will come. Even if you're chasing points, there's just no two there's no right or wrong way to start the season. Realistically, you just have to see how it plays out and go from there. But yeah, I'm much more short-sighted, I would say.
And that's, a bloke who's not short-sighted. He's already got his trade plans ready for round 13, 2028. That's the Spy. And the Spy said that last week, Dezzy, that focused a bit too much on the cheapies early that ended up being bludgers, for lack of a better word. The money did come and the cheapies came and all that. And it's not always that way, but I'm starting to sway a little bit to, not that I chase all the cheapies early by any means. I'm very, there's a lot of study that goes into getting my cash generators and how much they're going to make, et cetera, et cetera. But more often than not, there's a player later on with the low break-even. It might not even be a 200K player or a basement price player. It might be a 400K player who could be a keeper, but you get them for 400, they've got a -50 break-even. I think everyone thinks cash gen, who are the best cheapies? There's mid-range.
It's a lot of mistake. Like, it's a mistake that a lot of people make is just trying to bring in every cheapie they can. Like, if a new one pops up, they go for it instantly. But realistically, that's not going to win you Supercoach at the end of the day. It's like, you've got to do a bit more than that. You can't just chase cheapies and get a big bank balance. It's not really the objective of the game. Objective is points. So, yeah, I think, yeah.
It could be Nathan Cleary, who, God forbid, cops a HIA in the first minute of the first game of the round. And you've paid up big money for him. And then misses a week. Then the following week he comes back and, he gets sent off 5 minutes into the game because an awkward tackle goes askew. Gets suspended. All of a sudden he's got a break even of 250 and he drops 200 grand. You can jump on him and then he goes, you've got him at a 200K discount, and that can be a way of making money. Like, there are so many different ways. So, yeah, depending on how you want to go. What I will say, in contrast to sort of what you said there, Dezzy, in terms of, like, I just hate starting with nuffs in my team. And enough for newish players to Supercoach, or experienced players who are still going, who are these idiots, what are they talking about? Enough's basically a non-playing reserve, also known as an NPR, a player in your squad who is very unlikely to play in the NRL that year for their team. They might be a rookie who's a long way off. They might be an injured player who's out for the year, whatever it might be. Generally, when you have enough, they're dual position between 2RF and centre or 5'8.5", you can switch them around and just allows you to do things like the vice-captaincy loophole and make moves, all that sort of stuff. But I want 25 people, especially early on in the year, working for my team and doing a job. And I don't want some dead weight there because, as I said, with injuries, suspensions, all sorts of things that happen, you're generally going to find a non-player in a 25-man squad each week to use for your loop. Like, it might not always be that way, but yeah, that's the way I see it. Boys, on to our team previews. And also, if you want any more thoughts, we did do the first episode last week. We did some recap of what we learned last year, and my big one there was just over-planning for the bye period. I went for the major bye period around Origin. I went too hard on it, learned a lot from that one. So we have a good chat, myself and the Spy, about that on last week's episode. Team preview, we start with the four-time premiers, the Penrith Panthers. They're starting 17. I have got up on the SC Playbook website predicted starting 17s for every team in the NRL this season. The Penrith Panthers, I have got Dylan Edwards at fullback, Brian To'o and Casey McLean on the wings, Isaac Tungo and Paul Alamotti at centre, Blaze Talangi in a three-way battle for the 5'8 spot vacated by Jerome Luai. A few options there that could pop up. Brad Schneider, Jack Cole, Nathan Cleary at halfback, front row of Moses Leota and Lindsay Smith, Mitch Kenny at 9, Isaiah Papali'i and Liam Martin on the edges, Isaiah Yeo at lock, Jack Cole 14, Scott Sorensen at 15. I'm expecting him to go back into a middle role for the Panthers. Could stay on the edge and IPAP could play in the middle, but I'm thinking Papali'i starts on the edge. Luke Garner and Liam Henry round out the bench. Their draw to start the season, the Sharks in Vegas, then they have the Roosters at home being CommBank this year because Penrith is under repair, knocked down, completely getting redone. Yeah. Storm away, Rabbits away, Cowboys at home. Draw rating out of 10. 10 being easy, 1 being tough. It's a 4 out of 10. It's a pretty tough start. Let's start with the big boy, fellas. I'll start with you, Dezzy Creek. Nathan Cleary, 811K. Got a little mini surgery done in the off-season. Should be right for round 1, but is Cleary a bloke you're just locking in, set and forgetting for the season, or you finding a bit of value elsewhere?
No, you have to get him. He's straight in, lock him in. Yeah, wounded Cleary is still the best player in the comp. We've seen it, like, he won that grand final against Brisbane with like a torn knee or something. So he can just go hard whenever he wants. The draw, not really an issue for Cleary either. He's going to rack up points. He's an accumulator, as Spy likes to say. Geez, Timmy, if you're rating that draw a 4, what the hell is getting a 2 or a 1? That's about as hard as it gets.
Well, the Cowboys, they play at home. That's the 5th game of it. I do not think the Cowboys are in for a great year. I got some vocal Cowboys supporters on Twitter the other day, but I just think that they're lacking depth, particularly in the forwards. I think they're a couple of injuries away from being a bit light on.
I'll tell you what gets a 2. The teams that play Penrith.
Yeah.
They don't have to play themselves.
Exactly.
True, yeah.
You can't be a 2 if you're Penrith because you don't play yourself.
Yeah, that's
mate,
the best thing about that.
Roosters, very new look roster, lots of injured players, Walker gone, Cheese gone. They've got a lot of new faces. Sharks in Vegas, that's very tough. Storm, very tough. I think the Rabbitohs have a big year, but the reality is they finished, bottom 3 or 4 or something last year. So,
second last.
Look, maybe it's a 3 out of 10. Maybe it's a 3 out of 10, Dezzy.
You're still getting Cleary. Even if he's on a 1 out of 10 draw, you still get him. That's the point here I'm trying to make.
Tim, shut up. Just get Cleary. Maxie, Nathan Cleary.
Yeah, hard agree. I think just 2 things. One, you wouldn't have expected a world where in 2025 Nathan Cleary was cheaper than Dylan Edwards, but here we are. Second thing I don't think a lot of people are talking about, it's not just the absence of Jerome Luai, which might make him dominate more with the ball. It's like we're talking about a loved up playmaker here, right? Like this guy has been sharing photos deluxe of his bow on Instagram, and that's the kind of confidence that I want from my halfback in Supercoach. As well, you can't also forgive that if he's got a 4 out of 10, and they do this every year, the NRL for the Panthers. Start with all the hard games, get all the TV ratings. They're going to have a soft patch after that leading into Origin period, and it could be an opportunity to avoid him early. Maybe you're bringing him at a discount after that tough run when he goes bang, bang, bang and just gets ton after ton. But yeah, I think you're probably off better just saving a trade and putting him in your team. And
look, based on 2023, he starts at a discount. Averaged 83 points last season, 89 points back in 2023. There were a couple of injury-impacted games as well, a few injury layoffs, and he's returning from them. So, yeah, I'm with you, boys. I think you'd be a brave person not to start with Nathan Cleary in your team. Granted, if you want to get a bit risque, it is a tough draw, as Dezzy's pointed out quite clearly to me. If you're thinking maybe you can get a discount and get him around 5, 6 as the draw does ease up a bit, maybe you can save yourself 100k, but I think you're playing with fire over there. Other key players, boys, Isaiah Papali'i at 585k. As I said, it's obviously penning him starting on the edge for the Panthers after moving over from the Tigers. I love Isaiah Papali'i. If he starts and looks set to play 80, as I said, there is the question mark of Scott Sorensen there, and if he stays on the edge, but Scotty Sorensen was terrific for the Panthers in premiership winning years, coming off the bench, playing big minutes as a middle. I think IPAP starts there. Back at Parramatta, I know it was a while ago now, 2021, 2022. He averaged 78 and 79 in those years. He goes to the Penrith Panthers, the 4-time premiers. He's based on a 60 average of last season. Dezzy, I love IPAP. How do you feel?
I love him too, yeah. Realistically, you can just throw out that year with the Tigers. They're rubbish. He's in a good team now. He's gonna go back to his old ways. Mark my words on that.
Maxie's just walked out of the studio, slammed the door, avid Tigers supporter.
Avid's, yeah, that's not hard enough, mate.
Yeah, that's it. It's going lightly. What are your thoughts?
It's I think if he plays 80, then yeah, you got to get him because there's 10 points of value there at least. But there is a world, just given the options that they've got, that they don't need to, particularly early doors, rush him into those types of minutes. Regardless, I think that even if he plays 60 minutes, like he's good enough to get close enough to that price point. What I'll always say, guys like him around that price, like I think it's better to start with him because at the very least he's holding value that you can downgrade to the mid-ranger or cheapie who emerges if it doesn't quite work out. But I also like to keep a bit of cash in my starting team to move up if need be. So yeah. But no, he's in my team. I
will say the one little issue I have with it is that as we said, with Jerome Luai gone, Nathan Cleary becomes, if possible, even more dominant in this halves because he's probably going to have a halves pairing of, well, it'll be, Blaze Talangi, who I've got there at the moment, Jack Cole, Brad Schneider. Cleary getting a lot of ball. We assume Liam Martin stays on the right. Papali'i has played on the right. I think Liam Martin's played on the left in the past. If he does go over and plays outside like a Blaze Talangi or a Jack Cole, combinations take a long time to work out.
Yeah.
Between, especially, IPAP's a pretty unique player. Blaze Talungi, if he's a 5'8", he's a very unique player going into the halves. It could be a little bit tricky, especially if Cleary's getting all the ball on the right. So a bit of a pre-season watch, but regardless, I like it. Boys, not a heap else going on at the Panthers. Dylan Edwards, 839k. Brian Toto, 688k. Actually quite cheap. Bizzo there. Blaze Talungi himself, if he gets that starting 5'8" role. Jules CTW 5'8", 562k. Dezzy, does anyone else interest you at the Panthers?
Yeah, I'd probably go to Lungy if he did get that role.
Yeah.
I think he's at the right price. He could do some serious damage there. Edwards, yeah, it's a tricky one. He's super solid. He's super consistent. He's robust. Doesn't really break down that much compared to some of the other gun fullbacks that I like to own. But yeah, I think I'd just have to steer clear. Bizza, I always like to get him in, but 700k, it's a bit too much to pay off the rip for a centre wing. You kind of probably want someone like Kiraz instead, who doesn't need as many tries as Bizza to maintain that 70-point average. He's normally a player I target mid-year or late year.
I will say one thing, and I tend to agree. Like, none of these guys overly interest me outside of the ones we've mentioned, but Brian Toto, he chops and changes wings all the time. It's hard to line up. If he did lob on Cleary's wing and he stayed there, and we expect Cleary in the right edge to get a ton of extra ball, it could be a gold mine. Like 688k for a bloke with his pedigree, with a huge base, I don't mind it. That being said, I think there's probably going to be better value elsewhere. Maxie, anyone else you wanted to touch on, or are we good there?
Yeah, I'll give you one name that's going to make you shudder. Isaac Tungo. So Isaac Tungo last year was absolutely deplorable and missed more tackles than I've had hot dinners. He's priced at 49, but he's the first candidate for this year's Dudes with Other Dudes segment.
How dudes do with other dudes.
Yeah. So, look, let's talk about it, right? So, he averaged last year, without Nathan Cleary, 40 points, which is terrible. But when you throw in Nathan Cleary, that average jumps up to 68, which is what he averaged in 2023. So, you'd be a brave man to do it, but there's potentially like 15 plus points of value there. If he does turn into a beast on that right edge.
And upside.
Yeah.
We know he can go big.
That's it. And if Cleary's going to be the dominant man, his right centre and his right winger could stand to benefit by that same logic. So, again, he made people like me grow a lot of grey hair last year. Thankfully not in Classic, just in draft, but certainly something to think about.
Yeah. Not for me, but numbers are numbers. And he's one of them ones that said you can take a little flyer early if you're keen on him and you think he's in for a big year. If it does pay off, sweet. If it doesn't, you can move anywhere from 500k. So, an option. Matty, anyone at the Penny Panthers who catches your eye there?
Supercoach wise, nothing more than what you've said. I'm not convinced that Blaze Talungi is going to get the 6. And I don't think it's even a 3-way battle. I think it's a 4-way battle. I think Dane Laurie's right up there as well.
Yeah, Dane Laurie, apologies.
So I don't know if I would even think about going to Lungy. He's going to be a gun, but hype's a little much, I reckon, at this stage.
And the Penrith Panthers pride themselves on defence.
Yeah.
Blaze Talungi, at this stage in his early career, does not pride himself on defence. Who's your tip to get it?
I'm not saying that he's not my tip to get it.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure. And if I say he's my tip, I'm no more than 50% sure. Like, I don't. There's a lot there, but I just think a lot of people are going off what they saw him do with the ball in his first 8 to 10 games rather than the back end of the year, and also his defense was pretty bad sometimes. So I'm not he's going to be a gun, and he could be there round 1, and he could have a great year, but I don't think it's that locked in.
I agree. He's definitely not locked into the halves. I've got him as the front runner at the moment. His defence needs to increase significantly and improve significantly, because if it's anything near what he did last year, he'd be lucky to get a call-up for New South Wales Cup for Ivan Cleary's Panthers. So, but yeah, it'll be an interesting. I think Penrith are good enough to get it out of him. He's maturing. He's getting bigger. I think he'll be okay, but we need to see it first. Boys, moving on to the Cronulla Sharks, the other side going to Vegas, taking on the Penrith Panthers. They're starting 17. Will Kennedy at fullback does face bit of competition early on. Cade Dykes, Liam Ison, Sione Katoa and Ronaldo Mulitalo on the wings. Kale Iro and, speaking of names that make me shudder, Kale Iro. someone I did not own all last year. Just don't get into
you
it.
still turn up to work, mate, after that.
It's my job, I have to. KL, Iro, Jesse Ramey, it says an extremely settled lineup. Braden Trindle at 6, Nicho Hines at 7. They could switch, it won't change anything. Aden Fanua Blake, the new face there, and Oregon Kafusi in the front row. Blake Brayley at 9. Britton Nicola and Teague Wilton in the back row, along with Cameron McInnes at lock. The 14, Daniel Atkinson, and then the rest of the bench, Tommy Hazelton, Sifa Talakai, and Braden Hamlin, ULA. Toby Rudolph, he is out for the early stages, more than likely out with a shoulder injury. Boys, Sharkies, from one gun half to another. Nicho Hines, 735k. Dezzy, he starts cheap. It wasn't his best Supercoach year last year. Talk to me.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Normally, I'd say just get him. I'm a big fan of just get Cleary and Hines. They're the best players. You lock them in. I know Hughes had a spectacular season last season and outscored him, but on an average over like 3-4 years, Hines has been the best or second best. He's right up there with Cleary. So 730k seems like a steal to me. I think I'm almost set and forget on Cleary and Hines in the halves and just not even think twice about it.
Yeah, and I will throw in there as well, before we keep going, forgot the draw. Panthers in Vegas, Cowboys away, Rabbitohs at home, Doggies at home, Raiders away. Draw rating 5 out of 10. Dezzy.
Not fantastic, is it?
No. Is 5 the right number, mate?
You could 5's
fade
too
him.
high. I reckon that's a 4.
You reckon it's harder?
Yeah, I thought it was a 4 as well.
All right, we can edit it to 4. We've got a lot to do. But I'm just getting up here the great NRL physio. Super intriguing stats here around Nicho Hines. All the chat last year was that Braden Trindle kills his output, and Supercoach-wise, it doesn't work for him. To quote physio, plenty of focus on Nicho Hines' Supercoach performances with and without Trindle in 24, but what about injury? Averaged 91 over his first 8 games last year, 6 with Trindle. That dropped to 56 after an ongoing calf strain and ankle surgery. So everyone going, it's the Trindle factor, and maybe it is. Eye test comes into this, boys, etc., etc. I lean with Dezzy. I know I've had a chat to Guru about this. Guru not keen on Prince Nicho, but I think he's a very good price, Maxi. The tough draw is a consideration. Penrith in Vegas round 1 is awful. It's as bad as it gets. But I like him. And this tweet from the Fizz, it's helped me. What do you reckon?
First thing is, I don't know what Nicho Hines ever did to Guru, but geez, he just does not like that bloke, does he? But I think for me, the reason why I'm prepared to take a punt on Nicho is because of the flex. I've had a lot of thoughts in the last couple of days about how I want to use it. And there's another guy from a different team who's got a dual that slots him into halfback, who I think is a really good insurance policy for carrying Nicho. The facts are this, right? With a draw that tough, particularly Penrith round 1, we might have no proper eye test on what Nicho's going to do on those flat track games at Shark Park when he's beating up against my poor Tigers, which he does every year to the tune of 130 points. So we might not know until closer towards that Origin break what really is the deal with him. But I'm prepared to bring him in, give him a chance, knowing that I've got that cover so that if he's set to lose a ton of cash and looks awful in round 3, I can make one little trade and then use that money elsewhere.
And around their early draw, if we discard the Penrith-Vegas game, which is awful, NRL-wise, goes into the Cowboys in Townsville, and then they go to the Rabbitohs, 2 teams that, I'm not convinced on the Cowboys this year. I think the Rabbitohs are in for a big year. Point scoring wise, I'm not scared. Defence wise, I'm not scared. I think the Cowboys in Townsville, the Cows might beat the Sharks there, but it could be 40-38. And ditto the Rabbitohs game back at Shark Park. Doggies, good defence last year, but can they back it up? The Canberra Raiders away, God knows, but certainly not a terrifying defensive prospect, are they? So I'm pretty keen on Nicho Hines and just his upside, boys. We know what he's capable of. We know what he's done in recent years. He 95 average in 2023. He was 86 in 2022. 75 last year. That was him not having a great year. Calf injury, a bit interrupted at times. I think I like Nicho Hines for this year and a pairing with Nathan Cleary. All that being said, I think a lot of people are keen on minimum 2 to 3 gun fullbacks this year with that flex coming in. Couple of gun halves. We're going to need a few decent cheapies there to make this all happen, but it's good fun, isn't it, early on in the preseason when you pick your first team, you throw a bunch of cheapies in there, get all these guns, then you get to round 1 and there's no cheapies and you're like, well, I need to just rip this team apart. Elsewhere, I think it's probably just the backline boys. Iro at 640k, Ramian 635k, Mulitalo 664k. Dezzy, would you touch any of them or no interest?
All a bit too expensive for my liking, especially with that draw. I think Mulitalo is always an interesting one. He's like got serious big upside to him, but he's got those 15s in him. And if he starts the season with 2 15s in a row, you're in big trouble. So, I think you have to. There's probably better backline 600k players that if you were going to fork out that much for centre wing, and those are not the guys to do it on.
And I think the issue is like defense. There's not traditionally a lot of Supercoach or even NRL points scored early on in the season because attacks are clunky. We know defences are generally pretty tight. Maybe that's just because the attack's clunky and combinations are coming together. But everyone's pretty fit and firing. There are no sort of injuries to target or players coming in and out of lineup. So there's just the big players, there's always less scoring points. But in particular, backline players who do rely on attacking points, I don't love it. Maxi, any of those boys for you or nay?
Don't think to start with, but look, one day. And look, the only thing I would say that based on a draw, and again, this is just the draft head coming out of me. Against Penrith Panthers, he's running on at we're talking about Ronaldo running at the side with Isaac Tungo, who last year couldn't tackle.
Yeah.
And then he's running the next week up against the Cows, and they've also got changes in the centre and wings. So if they're going to exploit anything, maybe that's the areas that they do target as a team. So there could be a bit of attack, but yeah, too expensive. I think we'll spend my money elsewhere.
Yeah, pass. Aden Fanua Blake, 4 tons last season, 4 scores of sub 50, he had 8 tries. He averaged 60 minutes per game last season. He starts this year as the most high-priced front row forward. I'm not interested in him for starters, Dezzy. My concern is that he moves to a club that traditionally under Craig Fitzgibbons runs a 4-forward bench. At the Warriors, he was the main man. There was a lot of reliance on him. I feel like they had a lot of injury drama and in-game last year, and Fanua Blake just punched out big minutes, continued to score tries. Wade Egan really crafty in around the ruck there. I don't see him playing more than 60 minutes for starters. When I'm buying forwards in round 1, I want to see people who are increasing in minutes, a new role, whatever it might be. I think his role was plumb at the Warriors. He'll be the leader of this forward pack, but he was absolutely the leader of the Warriors forward pack, especially with Tohu Harris out for the majority or big chunk of last season. I'm not interested. I will want him at some point, but not round 1. How do you feel?
Yeah, this guy, he was the biggest thorn in my side last season.
Ooh,
if I owned him, I probably would have been, top 100, top 50 sort of.
What'd you finish?
300-ish, around there, 400. But yeah, AFB, I'm almost tempted to just grab him because he just annoyed me that much last year. But yeah, obviously minutes is a factor. Sharks can score tries through the middle, like they...
Tommy Hazelton.
Yeah, Hazelton does it. So if he does score 8 tries again, he's going to be... he will be one of the top scoring front rowers, if not the top. So it's always interesting. So you probably want to give it a cider for the first, maybe month or 2. See if he's getting the minutes. If he's scoring tries straight off the rip, I'm just going to bring him in.
Yeah, okay. I look at the Warriors and I go, they'd often carry like a Chanel Harris-Tavita or a utility back on the bench. Fitzy just loves this 4-forward bench, and I expect him, unless he's changed his mind for some reason, to run out the same. And I just don't see him increasing minutes. Not saying he won't play 60 again, because he probably does, and he'll score well again. I'm sure he will. Apparently he's been killing it in the preseason over at Sharp Park. I just don't see him improving on his average of last year in the early 70s. Maxi?
Mate, yeah, just going to agree with you on that. I think that strategically with how I set my team up, I don't want to spend that much money in front row forward. So I'll get to him at some point in the season, but I won't be to start with.
Yeah, and there's a couple of front row forwards in that 500k range, and I feel crook even saying it, but we won't get to them now. But Tino Malawi, Terrell May, I think I'm going to start with both of them. They're both pretty expensive, but I think they're both terrific value, and I hate spending up in the front row early. But, for example, they're blokes I see with upside in the front row, which is rare. I think they're undervalued. So, yes, I don't think there'll be room. Well, no, there won't be room for Adam Fanua Blake in my team. Guys, long-time partners of Matty, the Waterboy, Cronulla Sharks. Sorry, mate, I almost brushed you there.
No, that's all right. Pretty much gone over old ground. This is a bold prediction. I reckon Nicho's going to be the Dally M this year.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, okay. I'm not necessarily sure that he's going to be the best player of the season, But even when even 2023, he had a good year, but he nearly won the Dally M again.
Yeah.
And before he got injured, he was right up there last year as well. I reckon he's going to have a really, really, really good year. So that's just something. From a rugby league perspective, not a super. I just want to throw in. It's Brisbane Nicho. He's on a contract here this year.
Yeah.
He's not signed for 2026, and he's a gun. So I'm expecting him to have a big year as well. So that's just something to put in there, having the back of your mind too.
Sneaky little round one pod, Brisbane Nicho.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just on Nicho, I was just going to say that he would look amazing in West Tigers colours, but if you actually just do the numbers on his season, it's a tale of two halves. He started the season super slowly, and again, know that because I own him in a draft. But he finished the season with it, if you look at just his second half of the season, he was averaging close to 80.
Yeah.
Scoring tries, good base, setting up tries, line breaks deluxe. This was all while Nicho was essentially being pretty weird as the bloke inside him, meant to be throwing him ball. So there's a world where Nicho is undervalued too on his potential. Maybe it is that you need to wait until the attacks start rolling and scoring those, 28, 30 points a game. But yeah, it's not the worst shout to have him as a starting pick.
I feel like eye test.
680K.
I feel like the eye test will tell us a lot in the preseason. Again, they play in that Vegas weekend, so you've got to go a little bit early compared before the full team list come out. That make it a little bit tricky, but 682K. Have a look at him and Nicho, how they're both looking in the preseason, and that might tell the tale.
Just turned 27, coming into his prime.
Yes, yeah. Guys, long-time partners of SC Playbook, Morgan's Choice, Sutherland, Cronulla and Wollongong, led by Paddy and his team. They're back on board to support us in 2025. Over the last few years, Paddy's helped out a ton of SC Playbook listeners with their financial goals. Countless things the Morgan's Choice SCW can help you with, including first home purchases, investment purchases, asset and commercial finance, personal loans and debt consolidation. Guys, if in 2025 it's the year that you're looking to dip your toes in the water of the housing market, but you don't know where to start, and I stress this, you're keen as, you're sitting on a gold mine, you've been working your backside off for a few years, haven't gone on any holidays, and you're ready to invest in the housing market, you don't know how to do it, guys, give them a call. It's all about education. Find out where you sit, whether you can do it. Make the call to Paddy and his team. Usually that'd cost you $129, but because you're listening to this podcast, mention SC Playbook and it's completely free of charge. To do so, flick them a message on Instagram at mortgagechoice_SCW, or you can give them a buzz on 02 9521 1611, no matter where you're based in Australia. Boys, next team up, the Brisbane Broncos under Madge Maguire. They're 17 to start the season. Reece Walsh, fullback, Selwyn, Cobbo and Jesse Arthurs on the wings, expecting Cobbo to shift to the wing, which will allow Dean Mariner into the centres with Katoni Staggs. Benny Hunt and Adam Reynolds form a very enticing halves combination. Reynolds under a bit of an injury cloud, but hopefully good for round one. Payne Haas and Pat Carrigan in the front row. I'm expecting Carrigan to move to prop, Kobe Hetherington to start at lock. Blake Moser sounds like he's got his nose ahead to start at hooker. Little cheapy there at $312K for us. And in the back row, Brendan Piakura and Jordan Ricky. On the bench, Billy Walters, Corey Jensen, Xavier Willison, and then probably one of Fletcher Baker or Ben Takura, depending how Takura's preseason goes, but a big boy offers plenty. We'll see how that one turns out. Their draw to start the season. The Roosters away, the Raiders away, Cowboys at home, the Dolphins at Suncorp, so home, and then the Tigers at home. So particularly the last four, it's a pretty enticing draw. I've got it at a 7 out of 10, Dezzy. Is that all right?
I think that's perfect. You nailed it for once.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate that. Let's start at the back. Reece Walsh, Dezzy, 738K. Oh, boy, I'd love to own him with that draw starting off. We can potentially, if you want to pick a gun fullback in the flex position, we know we can start with 3 gun fullbacks. I don't know if I'll do it, but he's always enticing.
Very interested. I've never owned Reece Walsh in Supercoach, so there might be a time and place this season. It might be against the Tigers in round 5. But, yeah, I think if the Broncos can string it together, he's going to score very highly. Potential Dally M year, like Matty was saying for Nicho. I think Walsh has it in him. If the Broncos can be in the top 4, top 8 sort of area, I think they're in for a much better season than what they showed last year. They're a better team than that. So I think Reece, even when they're losing games, he can crank out 90 points in a half and then 10 in the next half. But still,
He
he's dangerous.
could come out on any given season from round one and average 100 plus. He's that good. He's still so young, still developing so much and learning his craft. If the Brisbane Broncos side, more importantly, turn up and they've got Carrigan and Haas fully fit and they're just rolling forward, playing big minutes and they're playing good footy, he could explode at any point. We know with him that the downside is there can be some lower scores, which is fine in any position except fullback, because when you're having lower scores, you've got your Latrell going ton after ton and Turbo going ton after ton and Teddy. It makes it tough. What about for you, Maxie? Reece Walsh?
Again, I think just subconsciously, he's the type of guy that I try and avoid in Supercoach, just because I'm a little bit more biased towards base and power stats.
Yeah.
But he's almost sort of, to put it in cricket terms, Glenn Maxwell's the exception that proves the rule for the types of players you choose in BBL, and Reece Walsh is sort of the same. He can just pull, 30, 40-point runs out of nowhere twice a game, and then he's averaging as much as all of the fan favourites. So certainly got to watch him, particularly with that draw. I think for me, the whole Brisbane team, it's just going to be eye test. We don't know what they're going to be like with a new coach. You see the reports, the whispers coming out about team discontent already up there. So yeah, look, I guess it's a long way of saying I don't know, but I couldn't knock anyone starting with him in round one at that price.
You two could not be any more different in the way you play Supercoach. Dezzy, all gut, I would say, and it works for him. Maxie, all numbers. Tell me what your precious little numbers say about this, Maxie, because I feel like I'm in between you two. Last season, disregarding his concussion game in round 3, where he played 4 minutes for 1 point, his lowest score all year was 38. That was his first game back from that injury against the Dolphins. Outside of that, a low score of 51. Outside of that, big scores everywhere, including 3 tons. Are we... In the back end of Sean Johnson's career, we looked at him as like, he's a bit of a roller coaster and there's too many low scores and he's up and down. And then you looked at the numbers and said, well, no, he's not. He got under 40 like once and was, 60 plus in 80% of games, whatever it might have been. Is it becoming a bit of a myth with Reece Walsh? Because the numbers last year certainly say so.
I counted those numbers by just looking at his base, and it looks like it's around 20 for the season, which is the thing that frightens me, just as like a complete beta male.
But like on the off chance that he doesn't get an attacking stat one game, he gets 20 points, he'll back it up with 4 try assists the next week for 120.
Yeah, and that's the part that I need to get my skull around.
Yeah.
And this is the draft player in me, is not thinking week to week about matchups. It's thinking about the overall average.
You're thinking him getting his 20 in the grand final.
Yeah, I am dead set. And I think the thing that would be like the kicker for me for Reece Walsh would actually just be him getting the kicking.
Yeah. With Adam Reynolds there,
yeah,
we know he missed a big chunk of last season. Walsh kicked some goals. Big factor.
100%. But look, I think you got to evaluate him in the same way that you look at like a Scotty Drinkwater, for example. And I feel like last year was a year that we all just got comfortable that Scotty Drinkwater is like a really good Supercoach option at fullback. In games where he's got a bulk Brisbane stand and he's not leaving the state, he's got those fast pitches where there's high scores, license to throw the ball around from the coach. It's a guy like Reece Walsh, it's eye test, right? If you see it in 1 week, there's a very good chance that he might just be able to string a few of them together. So, again, not quite for me. But, again, I would not knock anyone from wanting to start him, because he could easily come out of the gate and add 100K of value and potentially be a keeper up until that origin period.
He could be. Boys, Payne Haas. In his last 4 seasons, he's averaged between 59 and 62 minutes per game, so pretty consistent there. He had a low score last season of just 52 outside of an injury-affected game. He had 49 in base last year. That was down from 54 the year prior. 2023, he had a low score of just 55 and 2 scores all season under 60 points. We know how good he is. I don't really want to pay up that much for Payne Haas to start the year in the front row. He had 1.7 offloads per game last year. If under Madge Maguire, he says, mate, let's get this second phase going. Let's bring Reece Walsh into the game. Because he can go bang and offload 5 times a game with ease if he's given the licence to do so. It'd change everything for me. I'd still be reluctant to start with him, but from 1.7 a game to 5 per game could add 14 to 16 points per game like that. Has to happen. Need to see it. Not for me. Another one, boys, I want to see. I'm waiting for an NRL physio tweet about. He just looked injury impacted all last season. They were in licorice all sorts. So they were saying, you have to play big minutes. But a fit and firing Payne Haas, we know what he can do. Dezzy.
Yeah, I feel like you say it time and time again. If you own him, he's not gonna, it's not gonna be. You're not gonna go flying up the rankings. If you don't, you're not gonna go flying down the rankings. He's almost irrelevant to the rankings. Like, you know what you're gonna get. But yeah, the main thing I'm looking at if I am gonna buy him, I probably won't start with him. Though I can't knock anyone who does because he's just so solid. You want to see more than 1.7 offloads a game.
Yeah.
If he's offloading it 3-4 times a game, he's gonna push that average up into the high 70s, early 80s, which is when he becomes a must-have. But at this point, I mean, 670k, you could definitely get away with starting him. He's the best front rower. He will be for the next 10 years. We know this. So if you can find him, find a spot with 670k to spare, definitely can't knock starting with him.
Maxi?
He's a goal to get to, but he won't be in my side for round 1. And look, I think that, the next 10 years, don't forget Terrell May, mate. My mate at the Tigers.
Not a fan.
I reckon.
You know Terrell.
No Terrell.
Talk to us.
No, I can't see him. You said he was going to average 70.
Yep.
I don't think Terrell May is going to average 70.
All right.
I would be very, very surprised.
Let's put a case of beer on it.
All right.
We're
I normally do this with Spy, but
yeah, let's
I
do
normally win.
Mate, we're in January. We're going to have to fulfill to September, but Terrell made average over 70.
Done.
All right.
Oh, good early one there, boys. Moving on to Blake Moser. As I said, reportedly leading the way to start for the Broncos. Billy Walsh is likely to be on the bench in that 14 role and give him a little bit of a spell. An interesting one. Plenty of upside, really highly touted at the Broncos. And a few stats. Where are they here? Boys, I've absolutely lost him. Where's he gone? I'll start with you, Dezzy, while I get these up. Blake Moser at that price, role sharing with Billy Walters. Is 50 to 60 minutes enough to pick him and cash in, or do you want to see a bigger minute role?
I think 50 to 60 is enough. It's kind of the same theory as what the Raiders did last year with their two starting hookers. If one of them's, and the Eels as well, if one of them's getting 60 minutes, it's probably enough to get some price rises. It's not going to be a lot, but it's enough to make do over the starting month of the season.
Yeah. Maxi?
Yeah, I'd like him. I think that last year, probably what you're searching for are his creativity stats. And he's a guy who, in and around the ruck, near the try line, he can send the big boys through a hole or get over himself. So potentially not a season-long hold, just given that we want our hookers to be playing as many minutes as possible. And there aren't too many of them left these days, but certainly as a guy who could make a bit of cash on his 312 starting price. He's in my team at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely no idea. I've just done a bloody podcast on hookers with a bunch of notes around Blake Moser with the Roo, and no idea where they've got to. Anyway, we've got his stats up. 13-20 appearances in 2024 in the Queensland Cup. 6 tries and 5 try assists, 8 line assists. The numbers are okay, but I think Sandon Smith is going to be very popular in that cheapy hooking role. There's an opportunity to go dual hookers like maybe Sandon Smith. I think Sandon Smith, goal kicking for the Roosters more than likely, an 80-minute halfback. We'll talk more about him in future episodes, but looks near enough a must in my eyes. I'm nearly willing to go like a Sandon Smith and maybe one more expensive hooker, depending how it all plays out. But with Billy Walters on the bench, it does worry me. Blake Moser, I'm not entirely convinced on him. Boys, anyone else you wanted to touch on at the Broncos? Dezzy, Selwyn Cobber at 550k. He's back on the wing. Benny Hunt, 603k at the Bronx at 5'8" until Ezra Mann comes back, which is until about round 10. Anyone there, or are we moving on?
No, can't touch any of them. It's Walsh and Haas and no one else. Maybe Carrigan. If he gets 80 minutes over and over, yeah. If
he gets dual front row to RF for the first time in ever, he becomes an option because he's always averages about bang on Carrigan 65, in not enough for back row, but in the front row slot with dual position, Max, he does become an option. And if he's named front row and plays in the trials there, probably does get it.
Yeah, absolutely. In which case, it could be an astute stash in round 1 with a view towards that dual. That's certainly a tactic that worked last year for a guy like Josh Curran, doing that duel in round 6. But no, look, the only other guy from the Broncos worth thinking about is just Cobbo moving back to that wing. He's electric at right wing. That
Reece Walsh feeding
combination
him.
with Ben Hunt. Not Ben Hunt, with their halfback.
Reynolds.
Reynolds.
Used to play for the Rabbitohs, 300 games.
Short bloke, yeah.
Short bloke tattoos.
That's why I can't see him. He's probably under this table. He could be, I wouldn't know. But look, he can score a lot of tries, and again, just could go on a run. But I think the only thing that holds that back is that when you realise he's 550k and you can get a bloke from Newcastle on the left sting for 513k, it sort of makes that decision for you.
Yes. How will Greg Marju burn me this year? Time will tell. Kobe Heathen is just the other one there. If he starts at lock, which I think he will, 338k, he's a big watch as well. Matty, Brisbane Broncos, anything to add there?
Yeah, like if I have my rose-coloured glasses on, I'd love Reece Walsh. I agree with Dezzy. I reckon he could go close to Dally M. But the fact is, since 2020, we've seen them completely shit the bed in 3 seasons out of, 4 or 5. So they make me nervous. They've got a new coach and it's Madge, so, that's good. But I think, I'm going to be tipping them to make the top 4 this year, but there's that little sinking feeling that they might miss the 8 altogether. So that's why I'm worried about getting Broncos players outside of Payne Haas. I
feel like under Madge, the Broncos are either going to be top 4 and premiership contenders or bottom 4 because...
Or folded club.
They'll just... And I don't even think it's on Madge. The culture at the club.
It's not on Madge, no.
The culture at the club, it sounds more and more like there's not a lot of hard-nosed blokes there who are willing to put in, and either they buy into Madge and this supremely talented roster kill it and can win a grand final, or they're like, no, get their knickers in a knot and don't want to bump.
I agree. And I'm willing right now, and I will till round 1, give them the benefit of the doubt. They had, they made the GF in 2023. They thought they were kings of the world, and they kind of were in a way.
Yeah.
And it screwed up their season last year. They've lost Kevy Walters as their coach. So I'm willing to do that. But I'm not going to bet my life on it. So, yeah.
One of many big pre-season watches. Moving on to our last team for the show, and it is the St George Illawarra Dragons. Clint Gutherson, a few new faces here. Gutho at fullback, Tyrell Sloan and Christian Tui Pilotu on the wings. Tyrell Sloan, far from locked into that. There's a few options to play on the wing for them. He'll need to prove himself defensively in the pre-season to win that role. Val Holmes and Moses Sully, a tantalising centre pairing there. Kyle Flanagan and Lachlan Ilias in the halves. Jack DeBellin and Francis Mollo at prop. Damien Cook at 9. Tommy Eisenhuth at lock. Luciano Leilua and Jaden Sewer in the back row. Jacob Little off the bench. I expect him to come on and play 9. Damien Cook to spend time at 13. Bench could be one of a number of people, but Toby Couchman, Raymond Faitala-Mariner, Harm Saleh, Dezzy at the Dragons. Not super relevant at the moment, probably leading into the season. If you're after a cheapy halfback, Lockie Ellis is 348k, King Gutho 675k if you want to get real weird. Val Holmes, one of the best in the game in Supercoach, we know that, but new club, what does it look like? 784k. Happy to do this in a blanket. Is there anyone that interests you at the Dragons?
Not really. Maybe Moses Sully.
You stole me, bloody pod.
Absolute gun player. 470k. It's really just going to be dependent. We're going to talk about needing an eye test. This whole team needs one. Obviously, Val Holmes, he's shown time and time again he's one of the best centre wings in the comp, but you can't trust him in red and white colours. You just can't do it. But yeah, Sully's the only one that I'm kind of looking at that price, thinking maybe, but yeah.
As an early season flyer, and again, a lot to unfold between now and round 1, but if the Dragons look good in the preseason, what I like about Sully is, firstly, that his base was 31 last season. That's solid. There was also a game of 1 minute there where he scored -1, a base of -1, little things like that. They bring it down a little bit. So base probably close to 35. We've seen him base up around 40 in the past. Averaged 48 last season, but with Ben Hunt gone, they were so right side dominant. They would just lay on the left through Flanagan and they'd bring Sully under or hit a back row or whatever it might be. Then they'd attack to the right. And Zach Lomax scored at the end of it every single time and I didn't own him. It was fantastic. This year, let's say Ilias comes in, plays on the right, Flanagan on the left. Sully's just going to get a heap more attacking ball with Ben Hunt out of this team. His base is good. Aside from some question marks around the halves, I think they're an improved outfit, the Dragons, this year. I think there's more attack in there. I don't mind Sully. I'm not saying I'll pick him, but he's certainly a little flyer to start the year. Maxi?
Yeah, don't mind the logic of it all, particularly if you think that he's going to be inside Terrell Sloan, who's not going to be taking that many runs out of his own half. There's could be more work for him to do if that's how they want to play their football. But I think mostly I don't really want to take a punt on a team where I don't know too much about them. The two guys who I think are worth...
Based around the Illawarra, they play some home games at Cogra.
Is that, sorry, we're talking about the
Dragons.
The Dragons?
The Dragons. Sorry, we've got the Dragons and the Dragons mixed up, mate.
That's where you lost me. Yeah, look, I don't really want to touch them until we know what they look like and how they're going to play, because so much has changed. I don't think there's been a team where there's been more change in the off-season. The two things I'll call out is one, Jed Sewer had an amazing season last year. No one ever owned him, but I think he finished with a 65 average. He was one of the better second rowers, did really well. And secondly, one thing we know about Gutho, particularly from his time at Parramatta, is that not only is he a high work rate guy, but he goes to another level when his halves are young and inexperienced. And the best time ever to own Gutho in Supercoach was when either one of Dylan Brown or Mitch Moses was out, because the bloke would just step up and take over. And when you look at a halves pairing of Cole Flanagan and Lachlan Ilias, who, no offence to them, I'm sure they're lovely guys, but they're not great first graders. There could be a world where Gutherson is really stepping up into attack with his playmaking, creating new partnerships with quality outside backs in Tui Pelotu, Valentine Holmes and Sully, as you said. So there might be a little value there, but just something to watch in pre-season.
I don't think I've ever met a bloke who can go from being the world's nicest bloke to just seamlessly transitioning into a savage out of nowhere like you, Maxie.
Well, you got to, the people are here, they're listening to us for our opinions and advice. You got to give them. No point sitting on the fence.
I like it, mate. No arguments here. I don't have a lot to add at the Dragons until things maybe change throughout the preseason, as you said, and if there's a few eye catches. I will have a look at Sully. I think Val's not overpriced at 70.84, but let's see what the Dragons throw up, because he was phenomenal up at the Cowboys. You do make a good point around Gutho. If he wasn't in just an elite fullback position, I'd consider, but there are too many good options. The draw for the Dragons: Doggies at home, Rabbitohs at home, the bye in round 3, that's a little curly one as well. The Storm at home, first 3 games at home, that's unreal. Eels away, and then Titans at home. 4 of their first 5 games at home. So the draw's pretty good. I've given them a 6 out of 10. That's probably just due to the bye. It's probably a little bit easier than that if you get rid of the bye. From a Supercoach perspective though, Dezzy, how'd I do?
Pretty good.
Not bad?
Pretty good, yeah.
Thanks, mate.
First 2 bad, last 2 good.
Thanks, man. Matty, anything to add on the Dragons?
Nah, I don't know how Supercoach relevant it is, but which Couchman's the good one? Is it Toby?
Toby.
Yeah. Well, they're both good.
They're both good.
They are
Don't
both
go full
good.
Max Bryden.
No,
they're
no.
both good. One's just probably a bit better
one's
at this
more
point.
ahead.
Yes.
One's more ahead.
Yeah.
They're both really good.
Yeah.
I think we'll see more of them this year. I don't know how much more. I don't know how relevant that's going to be in Supercoach, but I really like both of them.
Well, if there's an injury, like Francis Mollo, he's not locked in a front row spot. He'll start there, and as will Jack Bellin. But if there's an injury there, it opens up a middle spot. They do have a lot of middles, though. Granted, they're not really big minute middles, but Damien Cook spending time at 13, little front row, but good footballers in your spot on there. Boys, I think that will do us for the SC Playbook podcast for this week. We'll be back next week with 4 more previews. I might even drop an early little team reveal and really get the waters bubbling if that's a thing. Dezzy, thanks for jumping on first time this year, mate.
No worries.
Feeling good?
Yep, feeling good.
Looking good.
Back at it.
Maxie?
Mate, thanks for having me. Hopefully you'll have me back. As I said, I thought I'd give myself a little bit of a break after BBL, but a day was enough. Got that team reveal almost ready to go as well. So I'm looking forward to jumping into the WhatsApp chat again this week with all of the subscribers and throwing around all these preseason ideas. And if anyone else wants to message me about who else I don't like, then very happy to share.
He'll let you know. The king of the WhatsApp, Maxie Bryden. That is live. Be adding those names, the early subscribers, to it tonight if you're listening on. I'm getting there. Busy day though. Beers and break evens back tomorrow. We start on the hookers this week. But for now, thank you for tuning in.